airport. So this is an example of a METAR. It can be a very short meter. It can also be a very, very long meter. Now, be aware that we have so many different possibilities of different meters that it is impossible to cover all of them. We'll cover the most basic ones, and then the rest of them you use as self-study and through the documentation to get better as you progress through your S2, S3, and C1. Now, to tell how this meter can be read, we will look it up into different parts. More precise, we'll break it up in different parts. We'll first look at the very basic things of the parts, and then we'll take everything again and look at the advanced parts of it. Now, we will take this meter as an example to begin with. This is more or less how a meter looks, and can be broken up essentially into 5 parts. For the sake of making it easier, we will name them an admin info, the runway info, general meteorological information, temperature and QNH, and then something called a trend. Now, first we're going to break these 5 categories up and talk a little bit about them. The first one is called the administrative info. It consists of the airport code, then it consists of the time in Zulu, and the date, of course. The time changes every half an hour, and also it changes if changes happen so rapidly that you have to put on a new meter. Then you'll see an skewed number like this. Now, the second part, we move over to runway specific information. Now, for the purpose of the basic meter, it will include the wind measured for the active runway. In the basic meter, this is all we're going to include for now, and it will make sense as we go into the advanced stage, as there will come more. Then comes the more advanced one, which is the general meteorological information. Generally, it includes 2 different things. It includes visibility and the cloud base. Now let's look a little bit about these 2 different things. Visibility is measured for how long a distance you can spot a black dot on a white background. Now, why am I telling you this? It makes sense later on in the presentation. It goes from 0000 to 9999 meters. The 9999 is displayed once the visibility is more than 10 kilometers. It is pretty simple. Moving along to the cloud base, it is a little bit more advanced. As we divide the meter up in parts, we'll look up to the coverage, which is set by a prefix of the type of clouds, and the altitude in feet of where the clouds are. Now in this case, it's 034 being 3,400 and 055 being 5,500 feet. The more difficult one is of course the coverage. So let's talk about the different coverages. To describe the coverage, you need to understand that a sky is divided up into 8 slices. These we call for octaves. Of these 8 octaves, there are 4 different kinds of cloud coverage to describe how many octaves of the sky are being covered by clouds. These are as few clouds, scattered clouds, broken clouds, and overcast. The smallest one is few clouds. That is when either 1 or 2 of the 8 slices are covered by clouds. As you can see here, that's a nice summer day with nothing much happening. Next, it's scattered clouds. Coming later on, if you have between 3 and 4 octaves of the sky covered. Now, of these 2 types, this is called occasional clouds, which means that they can be circumnavigated and used use a visual approach even though that the clouds are there. The other 2 is called ceilings, which means you have to be below the cloud base in order to do a visual approach. Now the next one is broken clouds, when between 5 and 7 parts of the sky is being covered by clouds. Now the last one is of course 8 out of 8, which is a complete ceiling, and this is called overcast. So to sum it up, you have the lateral visibility in meters from 0 to 9,999 meters. being above 10 kilometers. And you have the vertical visibility in feet, which is covered into 4 categories. What can happen if you have visibility more than 10 kilometers and a cloud base above 5,000 feet, you will see this thing in your METAR. CAVOK, meaning CAV OK, ceiling and visibility OK. Next section, we're looking into the temperature and the QNH. Very simple. Temperature, the dew point, and the QNH. The reason these are put together is because these rarely change. There's not more to that than these points. The very last thing is what's called a trend. This you might not heard about before. Now, remember we talked about the METAR being an observation at a specific time. The trend is something you put at the end to inform of short-term pending changes of the weather. More specific, it tells about the next 2 hours into the future how the weather might change. For this, there are 3 different kinds of trends. The first one you have is the becoming period. A becoming means a complete change in weather coming within the next 2 hours. A classic example would be becoming 10 kilometers of visibility, scattered 3,000. This is something that will come after you've had a long rainy day and suddenly the weather is clearing up. The next one you have is tempo, also means a temporary change, which means it's a temporary change in the weather kind of coming and going. An ideal example of this would be in the summer. An isolated cloud drifts over the airfield. Suddenly it goes from summer weather to heavy rain and thunder, and then 20 minutes later, it's all over again. This happens all the time in the summer and could look like this. A tempo, 4 kilometers visibility, with thunderstorms and rain. This makes sense. Visibility falls due to the raindrop, and thunderstorms and rain will be in the area. The last one is called no sig, meaning no significant changes will occur within the next 2 hours. That's very simple, and all these 3 ends with the equal sign at the end, telling that it's the end of the METAR.